So, welcome back. Young Jody was searching for the young deer in the forest. He was alone now. He had asked Melville to go back. He was searching the footprints of the young deer. Movement directly in front of him startled him so that he tumbled backward. Suddenly, there was a movement exactly in front of him that disturbed him, so he turned backwards, tumbled backwards. He moved a little backwards. The fawn lifted its face to hiss. He saw the young deer was there. It lifted up its face to that of Jody's. It turned its head with a wide, wondering motion and shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. The young fawn was there. It lifted its face towards Jody's. It turned its head with a wide, wondering motion. It moved its head in a direction with a wonderful, surprising movement, and shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. It shook the boy inside because its eyes were quite liquid, watery eyes. It was quivering. It was shaking. Its body was moving. It made no effort to rise or run. The young fawn, the young deer, did not make any effort to sit up or run away. Jody could not trust himself to move. Jody could not believe whether he should move or not. He whispered. Jody whispered to the young deer. He said, "It's me. It's me. It's me who have come to save you." The young deer lifted its nose, scenting him. The young deer lifted up its nose, tried to smell him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. He took one of his hands to the young deer near and placed it on the soft neck of the fawn. The touch made him delirious. The touch made him excited, joyful. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. Jody moved forward on his four legs, his hands and feet, and he was close near the young deer. He put his arms around its body. He placed his both arms around the body of the animal. A light convulsion passed over it. There was a kind of shivering, but it did not stir, but it did not move. He stroked its sides as gently as though the fawn were a china deer and he might break it. He was stroking, he was patting its sides of the young deer so gently as if not to break it, as if it was a clay deer. Its skin was very soft. Skin of the animal was very soft. It was sleek and clean and had a sweet scent of grass. It was very smooth, very shining, and has a smell of the grass all around. He rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. He himself stood very slowly, very gradually, and lifted the animal in his arms. Its leg hung limply. The legs of the animal hung there very loose, as if broken. They were surprisingly long, and he had to hoist the fawn as high as possible at his arms. The legs of the animal were so long that he has to lift it up as high as he could. He was afraid that it might kick and bleat at sight and smell of its mother. Jody was afraid that the animal may kick, may bleat, may make noise as soon as it will smell the body of its mother. He skirted the clearing, so he took a long circle to the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket, and he moved towards the thick bushes. It was difficult to fight through with his burden. He has the lot of the animal, and it was difficult passing through that way. The fawn's legs caught in the bushes, and he could not lift his own with freedom. It was very difficult because the fawn's legs caught in the bushes, and it was very difficult for himself to lift his own legs with freedom. His free movement was almost difficult. He tried to shield its face from pricking vines. He tried to cover the face of the animal, the young child, from pricking the thorns. Its head bobbed with his stride. With his movement, its head was moving up and down. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. He was overjoyed because the animal has accepted him. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He moved fast until he reached to the intersection, the square that led to his home. He stopped to rest there and set the fawn down on its dangling legs. He stopped there to take rest, and he made the fawn to stand on its legs that were dangling, that were moving, that were not stable. It wavered on them. It could not stand still there. It was moving here and there. It looked at him and bleated. The young deer looked at him and bleated, made a noise. He said, enchanted. Jody said, very much attracted, affectionately, I'll carry you after I get my breath. He said, I'll carry you home once I get my breath, once I take rest. He remembered his father saying that a fawn would follow if it had first been carried. He remembered his father once saying that a fawn would always follow you if you have carried it once. He started away slowly. So he started moving away from the animal slowly. The fawn stared after him. The fawn looked after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. This time again, he patted it and walked away again. He was trying to make it follow him. It took a few wobbling steps towards him and cried piteously. It took some steps, unstable steps towards him, and cried out of pity. It was willing to follow him. The animal was willing to follow Jody. It belonged to him. It was his now. It was his own. He was light-headed with his joy. He was very happy. He was light-headed with joy. He could not think very clearly as he was so happy. He wanted to fondle it. He wanted to love it, care it, pat it, to run and romp with it, to run and play with it, to call it to come to him. He wanted to call it to come to him. He dared not alarm me. He did not want to terrify the animal. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. He picked it up in his arms and carried. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. It seemed to him that he was not carrying any weight, and effortlessly he was walking. His arms began to ache and he was forced to stop again. While moving, his arms were aching, paining, and out of pain again he has to stop. When he walked on, the fawn followed him at once. Now again, when he started walking, the young deer started following him. He allowed it to walk a little distance, then picked it up again. He allowed the animal to follow him for a little distance, and again picked up in his arms. The distance home was nothing. The distance home was not more. He could have walked all day and into the night, carrying it and watching it follow. He was so joyful, he was so happy that he could have walked on foot with the animal in his lap as long as he wanted, all day and night. He was wet with sweat, but a light breeze blew through the June morning, cooling him. He was sweating because of his walking and the load of the animal in his lap, but a cool breeze was blowing on the June morning and it was cooling him. The sky was as clear as spring water in a blue china cup. The sky was quite clear as the clear water. He came to the clearing, the place where there were no bushes. It was fresh and green after the night's rain. As it had rained at night, the weather was quite clean. He fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set down the fawn to manage it. So he fumbled with the latch. Latch is that something to close the door. So he has to find out the latch to open it, and was finally obliged to set down the fawn to manage it. And finally, to open the door, he has to settle down the animal on the ground. Then he had an idea. He would walk into the house, into Penny's bedroom. He has the idea that I would walk into the house directly in Papa's bedroom with the fawn walking behind him, and let the young one of the deer following him. But at the steps, when he was climbing the steps, the fawn balked and refused to climb them. The young deer refused to climb on the stairs. He picked it up and went to his father. He picked it up in his arms and went to his father. Penny lay with closed eyes. His father was lying down with his eyes closed. Jody called, "Papa, look." Penny turned his head. His father turned his head towards him. Jody stood beside him. The fawn clutched hard against him. His father saw that Jody was there and the fawn in his lap, in his arms. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were as bright as the fawn's. His father could see that there was joy in the eyes of his son and the animal. He said, "I'm glad you found him." His father said, "I'm happy that you could find." Jody then went to the kitchen. The fawn wobbled after him. He went to the kitchen. The fawn also moved after him. A pan of morning's milk stood in the kitchen shelf. He could see that a pan was there in the kitchen that has milk. The cream had risen on it. There was cream on the milk. He skimmed the cream into a jug. He took out the cream of the milk in a jug. He poured milk into a small gourd. He held it out to the fawn, and he offered the fawn to drink. It butted it suddenly, smelling the milk. The animal quickly licked it. He saved it precariously from spilling over the floor. He did not allow the animal to spill the milk over the floor. It could make nothing of the milk in the gourd. Could make nothing of the milk that he has poured in the gourd. He dipped his fingers in the milk and thrust them into the fawn's soft, wet mouth. He dipped his fingers and thrust his fingers into the mouth of the fawn so that it could taste. It sucked greedily. The animal sucked his fingers greedily, out of hunger. When he withdrew them, it bleated frantically and butted him. When he withdrew his fingers, the animal started making noise frantically and again butted him. He dipped his fingers again, and as the fawn sucked, he lowered them slowly into the milk. So he was teaching the animal to suck milk. The fawn blew and sucked and snorted. Again the animal sucked and snorted, made noise with his nostrils. It stamped its small hoofs impatiently. It was impatient to drink milk, and it stamped its feet. As long as he held his fingers below the level of the milk, the fawn was content. The fawn was satisfied with drinking the milk. It closed its eyes dreamily. The animal closed its eyes dreamily, as if in dream, because so satisfied after drinking the milk. It was ecstasy to feel its tongue against his hand. It was extreme joy feeling the tongue of the animal on his hand. Its small tail flicked back and forth. The small tail of the animal was moving here and there, to and fro. The last of the milk vanished in a swirl of foam and gurgling. The last remains of the milk vanished, disappeared in a swirl of foam and gurgling, or we can say very quickly, the young fawn finished drinking the milk, and it was extreme joy for the child. So this is the beautiful story of Jody and the young deer.